guys. Happy Thursday night. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody had a great Thursday day or switch it. And if it's night for me, then it's morning for you. For my subscribers from across the pond, and from the other hemisphere, right? Yeah. So, and yeah, because Europe is across the pond, right? And then Australia is in a different hemisphere. Okay. I think I got it. Um, so anyway, good evening. I hope everybody's doing well. Hi. Hi, Heather, whatever. Hi, Cement Shoes. Hi, Jennifer Bradford. Hi, Corky S. Hello. I hope you guys remember to hit the like sign, or the like sign, the like, the thumbs up, whatever. I can't even talk. I should probably just stop right now and just end it. On your way in, I hope you guys remember to hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down if you just want to see what it does. That would be that's fine. Hey, Amelia Sparkles. So, um, hey, Tony. Hey, hey, hey. Um, so what I wanted to do tonight is we were watching this morning, obviously the trial, and um I was talking about I had some thoughts about the shoes, okay? And we were also talking Nonstop Mom had asked me about the trailers, the homes, okay? And whose decision it was to remove the homes and store them at that warehouse in Waverly, and all of like how long were the scenes secured, and that whole process, right? So I told her that I would look into it, and I did, and I found an amazing article that's um in line with the other articles about the timeline of the events and the surrounding the moving of these trailers, why they were moved, and all of the questions that we had. So I vetted it and feel that it is a good source. It's also local, I believe. And so, hi, Coolest Reviews. Hi, Tony. So, therefore, that's the article I'm going to use, and we're going to talk about that. And then, I don't know if you guys are following the Alex Jones defamation trial, but he has testified today, and it was quite contentious. So I want to show some clips from that. I hear that the whole trial has been full of shenanigans and just clip worthy moments. So I thought we'd go over that a little bit. As far as the testimony today, um, honestly, it was a lot. Now they have moved to talking about crime scene number three. And crime scene number three is Dana Roden's home that she shared with Hannah Mae Roden and Chris Roden Jr. Okay. So they're talking about that specific crime scene, and because they've got the um, special agent from the BCI who was the lead um, in that on that specific crime scene. He's on the stand now testifying. So essentially, what the BCI did is when they got out there and realized, what was going on, they the way that they decided to tackle these crime scenes is to have a different agent be in charge of each of the crime scenes. So there's going to be four different agents that are in charge of the crime scenes. So, which I think is a good idea, because I feel like doing it that way, should there be questions raised about, um, you know, mishandling. Let's say a protocol wasn't followed at crime scene one, right? It doesn't have this quite the same domino effect if it's different investigators being in charge at the different crime scenes, right? So if it was the same lead investigator who handled all of the crime scene duties, delegating, supervising, doing, collecting, photographing, etc. It's easier to, did I say hi to everybody? I feel like I didn't. Did I say hi? I think I did. Sorry if I didn't. I'm sorry. I know I said hi afterwards, but I can't remember if I said hi. I don't know. I'm tired. I'm sorry. Anyway, I feel like it's better that way, just that way if somebody messes up at crime scene number 1, they don't start to question crime scene number 2, crime scene number 3, and crime scene number 4, is my point. So I thought that's a good way to do it. Hold on just a second. I'm going to cough, and I don't want to cough in y'all's ear. So I agree with that. And so basically what took place today is the BCI special agent in charge of crime scene number 3 was on the stand all day. And I don't even know if they got to cross-examination. If they haven't, I have to look. If they haven't, we can probably expect for him to be on the stand tomorrow morning, and then the medical examiner will take the stand again. And that seems to be how they're doing it. Now, there was... You say hi whenever you want, Sam. Hi. I'm confused. I'm confusing because I'm confused myself. Anyway, before court began this morning, George Washington Wagner IV's defense attorney stood up, and he wanted to argue this motion that he placed before the judge. And it's essentially regarding the photographs. So I want to just play you guys that part of it because I find it to be an interesting argument, quite frankly. So let me get over to what I'm trying to find. And share the screen with you guys. Give me just 1 second. I'm sorry, you guys. I don't honestly think that I can be on incredibly long today. I'm just tired. It's, going live even though I took last night off, I was still live yesterday morning. And there's other stuff that I'm working on for you guys too, because, I want to, have I want us to have various topics to discuss and cases to discuss. And so I'm just tired. I just don't have the I don't know. I don't recover like I used to, I guess is the word. I don't know. Hold on, let me just go back a few seconds. All right. Let me share the screen. Yeah, 5-hour energies, they only be doing so much. But I'm actually fascinated by this case, and I want to talk about it with you guys. It's just that it kind of it's all kind of caught up with me today, and this is typical Jen Lou shenanigans. Typically by Thursday, like anybody else, I'm kind of tired. It's just not like, anything new. But yeah. All right, so I want you guys to watch this part because this is important, and then we're going to talk about it, okay? All right, here we go.
September 22nd, 2022. This is the case of State of Ohio plaintiff versus George Washington Wagner IV, case number 2018 CR 155. And today is another day of jury trial. We've convened here In the absence of the jurors, the defendant is present in court.
Yeah, Amelia, I'd
He
be
is
burning through
represented
it
by his
in about
attorneys,
2.5,
John Parker
somewhere
and
between
Richard Nash.
2.5
The
and
state
3
of Ohio
hours. Yep.
is represented
Show
by
do.
prosecuting attorney Rob Junk, and also by special prosecuting attorneys Angela Canepa and Andrew Wilson. Also present is Ryan Scheider, special agent with Pike, with Ohio, BCI and I. We've convened here in the absence of jurors. A motion was filed earlier this morning, motion number 111, entitled Motion for Mistrial, and the court intended to give counsel an opportunity to argue that motion prior to the jurors being brought in. An oral motion was made yesterday, which the court had indicated it was overruling. However, this written motion was filed this morning, so the court wants to give counsel an opportunity to argue that. And so, Mr. Parker or Mr. Nash, on behalf of the defendant, are you ready to argue this motion?
Yes, thank you, Judge.
Is the state ready to have this argued now?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you, Judge. Appreciate the opportunity. As you just stated, we did make an oral motion yesterday. We needed to memorialize it by written motion, and I failed to make a couple of the details in the arguments, which I placed in the written motion. But Your Honor, the point here is that the state has repeatedly used gruesome photographs, mainly from the crime scenes of the victims and through the testimony of the coroner, the various autopsy photographs of the victim. And it's important to emphasize to the court that, the case against my client, George Wagner, is about complicity. All right, that's been the state's theory throughout all this. He's not a shooter. And we've never put into controversy, it's not a point of contention about the manner or cause of death of these various victims. They were all shot to death. That's very clear. We've never disputed any of that. It's very clear that there are 3 different types of guns that were used. We've never disputed any of that. The question is whether my client was complicit with the people that did the shooting, person or people that did the shooting. That's really the issue before this jury now. It's not whether Jake Wagner or whoever fired the fatal shots. That'll be established quite clearly. But to continue to repeatedly use these gruesome photographs against my client when he is not the shooter, it's unfair. And even if the evidence is somehow marginally relevant, and we're not conceding that, even if it's marginally relevant to some issue in the case, there's still the danger of unfair prejudice, which the court must weigh under the evidence rules, under the due process clause, to ensure my client is getting a fair trial. So, the case I cited yesterday, I cite once again in here that photos are admissible if relevant and probative of a disputed issue, and especially with the coroner. It's not in dispute the manner and cause of death. And so, these photographs are difficult to look at, and they're not relevant, and they're not probative of a disputed issue in this case. And so we filed this written motion because we're going to go into scene 3 today, all right? And then at some point we'll go into scene 4, and we're going to have a repetition of gruesome photographs, both from the crime scene and eventually from the scene. And so we bring this up now, and we want a continuing objection on the record, so we're not interrupting every time a photograph is shown, because we have a contemporaneous objection rule, and I don't want to be accused of waiving any objection, but I don't think it's also necessary to object every time a photograph is shown, otherwise it's just too disruptive. So I want a continuing objection on the record to make it very clear we're not waiving this issue, and we think it's gone too far at this point, given that my client is accused only of complicity here. That's the state's theory of complicity. Thank you, John.
Let me say before I hear from the state, the one difficulty with the continuing objection is that we have several photographs that go up. Some of them might not be what you would have described as gruesome. So I'm not sure whether you're objecting to all photographs or how the court would know which ones that you feel should not be viewed.
I'm happy to object to each one that I think, if that's what the court wants me to do. I have no problem with that. But I don't want to be accused of trying to throw the state off its pace or its case here. But I think, the most gruesome ones are pretty obvious, all right? They're the close-up photographs, if there's a bullet hole in a victim and they show it from 6 different angles, they shave the person's hair and then they get closer and they get closer and they get closer. This becomes gruesome. It's repetitive. It's not necessary, all right? When a victim is lying in bed and has been shot and killed, perhaps one photograph will accomplish whatever goal they think is necessary, not 5 or 6 from this angle, that angle, this angle, that angle. It becomes repetitive and gruesome. The close-ups are just not necessary. We're not contesting the caliber of the bullet. We're not contesting the cause and manner of death. And if you want me to object with each photograph, I'm more than happy to do that. But that's our position.
Well, I think that it would be a clearer record if you objected to the ones that you felt should not be shown, as opposed to just having a continuing objection, because some of the photographs I think you may not find to be objectionable. So in order to make the record clear, I think that would be
We're happy to do that.
on behalf of the state.
Your Honor, some of these arguments we made yesterday, but first of all, would note for the record that at sidebar on several instances that Mr. Parker has not objected to the jurors seeing the photographs, only that we were publishing them on the big screens, and the impact that had on the audience, et cetera. So this is a different argument now with the impact of the jurors. So I would say that he has not yet objected to the photos that have come in thus far. Additionally, Your Honor, the state has the burden of proof in this case. We have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt each and every element of the offense. We have to first prove that there was an aggravated murder before we can have George be complicit in any of those where he was not the shooter. Again, we've repeatedly said that the state's theory is not necessarily that George was not a shooter. So establishing the weapons that were used, the positions the bodies were in, also again goes to corroborate Jake Wagner's statements about what happened, because this evidence will corroborate a great deal of that, Your Honor. The number of shooters in this case is absolutely a disputed fact. So again, I said back in chambers, we've been very conservative in our displaying of photos. One of the cases that Mr. Parker cited states that we cannot, courts have been almost universal in their condemnation of omitting photographs depicting the victim's body after it has been subject to autopsy procedures. We have not shown a single one of those where, when they do their internal exams, that's what this is referencing. Even though there was certainly some probative value to be gained from that, we on our own volition chose not to show those. But, as far as the shaving and then showing that has been important to Dr. Lohman's testimony when she's talking about stippling or other things that are visible. And again, it helps the jury to be able to see what she is talking about. So, and once again, Your Honor, the number of victims in this case is not a state's, right? That has nothing to do. The number of photos per individual, is certainly not objectionable, especially because we are trying to be very conservative about that. So again, the state feels that everything that we have put into evidence so far is important to connecting the dots later for the jury in proving the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of each and every offense in this case. The burglaries, the aggravated burglaries, the aggravated murders, it's not just the murders that are on trial either. So we would respectfully request the court to overrule the motion for mistrial again.
I have noticed, just based on the numbers used here, that if the numbers indicate the number of photographs you have, that you're not using all of your photographs, or maybe what you might even describe as nearly all of the photographs that you have. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, Your Honor. I mean, we are trying to not, overexpose the jurors to, these gruesome photos, just from the aspect of, they probably don't appreciate it. So we're trying to only show them what we feel is necessary to prove the elements in this case.
Is it the state's position that some of these photographs are relevant for other purposes other than to show cause of death?
Absolutely, Your Honor. And one of the biggest things I said, in opening statement, they basically said that Jake Wagner is a liar, because Jake Wagner absolutely says that his brother, George, accompanied them, helped prepare for the murders, helped conceal the murders afterwards, and was present and entered the residences, etc. So any piece of evidence that we can introduce that corroborates the remaining part of Jake's statement is absolutely of high probative value to the state.
Anything further from the defense?
No, thank you.
The court will overrule defendant's motion number 111 entitled Motion for Mistrial. And the court will consider at a later point 110, which would had to do with judicial notice of the fact that 3122 Union Hill Road, what I'm being asked to find by judicial notice is that is in Sauter County, Ohio, and the court will defer ruling on that.
Okay, so this is an excellent point. Bullying with cotton balls. Yes, the whole point of gathering evidence to include pictures, yes, it is for trial. Okay, so there's a couple of things that I want to point out here. And on what I'm pointing out is from a legal standpoint and not a my personal opinion, if that makes sense. What I feel at this point. We'll go into that, but for right now I just want to explain things. So basically what the defense is saying is, hey, we're not arguing that the rodents were shot to death. We're not arguing the number of times that they were shot. We're not arguing that the manner of death is homicide. We're not arguing any of that. Okay. What we're saying is that the state has made it their contention that George Wagner did not pull the trigger, which doesn't make him any less guilty under the law. And we are going to argue our points there. But we think that because basically what they're arguing is we think that the part of the reason the state is showing these gruesome images, what they term is to be gruesome, that's not my term, although they are awful pictures. Autopsy pictures are never pleasant. But anyway, what the defense is saying is essentially none of this, none of these pictures, and as far in conjunction with the testimony on the stand, is in dispute from the defense. We agree that this was the cause and the manner of death, right? So for you guys for the state to continue to be putting this up, it is to elicit an emotional response from the jury. They're trying to, basically what the defense is saying without saying it is, the state it doesn't have a whole lot of physical evidence to tie George Washington Wagner IV to the crime scenes. And so what they're trying to do is inundate the jury with all of these pictures to elicit an emotional verdict rather than a verdict based solely on the evidence that has been presented thus far. So the state has then come back and said, oh, no, 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 no. We do think that George Washington Wagner IV had a gun in his hand. So that is definitely in contention. Whether or not he actually pulled the trigger is a bone of contention for the state. And so showing these photographs is 100% necessary to prove all of the elements of this crime under the statute, because remember, there's special instructions for each count of murder, okay, which is 8, and then they have a special set of instructions under the 8, not special, but you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, not instructions. Special specifications, circumstances, special circumstances under each of the murder counts. So it is necessary for us to show these pictures in conjunction with the witnesses that are testifying, because we intend to prove through these pictures and other uh, evidence of some sort, whether it's witness testimony, whatever, because they haven't said yet, that George Wagner was not just acting as as an accomplice to the principals, right? But he may have in fact been a principal, right? That's what their argument is, which is different than what they argued from day one, as far as their from their opening statements. And I'm not the only one that interpreted it that way, because that's also what the defense attorney said. And to be quite honest with you, I actually agree with the defense on this one. And the reason why I agree with the defense on this one is because of exactly what I just said. The state's response was that he was under the impression that this trial isn't about putting a weapon in George Washington Wagner IV's hand, but proving that he um, acted. He wasn't just acting as a party to the principles. He was part. That's what the state put forth, is that even it and the reason I remember this so distinctly is because the when she was making her opening statements, hi anaphylaxis, um, she made sure to to read the special provisions, or I think that's what it's called, whatever it is, the special circumstances provisions, whatever, for whatever the term is, I can't think of right now, underneath each count, because in part they read whether acting as a principal or in consort with another party to cause or bring about the unaliving of each one of the victims, which means essentially, if you were anybody that was at these crime scenes was a participant, whether they pulled the trigger or not. And then on top of it, you have I guess the state's intending to introduce evidence of George Washington Wagner IV being part of the planning, taking part in the planning, the discussions, and then after the murders were carried out, in taking part in the destruction of evidence and the essentially, um, you know, not being found by not being caught by law enforcement. Any step that they took to not get caught was part of it, and he acted in part. And so that, under the statute in Ohio, makes him equally culpable under the law as if he had pulled the trigger himself. Now, that is what she said when she did her opening statements. I do not, and I would absolutely remember her saying that they suspect that George used um, e- whatever gun on whatever person, right? But she didn't. And so I think that the problem here is going to be not now, later. This is the type of objection and it being overruled that, should he be convicted, is the type of thing that gets that gets convictions overturned and gets a new trial. It's one of those situations. And so exactly. Jennifer. Exactly. Pretty much. That's the problem here, and this is the kind of thing that gets convictions overturned on appeal. So I think that a good compromise would be to have the pictures available and introduced into evidence. And if the jurors decide that they need them to look at them while they deliberate, that's different than continuously publishing. Um, and I will also agree with the judge that in his assessment of the situation that the state has 11 billion photos and they're only showing 50 1100, so they're not showing all of everything that they have. They are trying to be conservative. They are trying to um, only show the ones that are the most necessary. But this could be problematic should there be a conviction. Okay. So and now we're on to the second part that I talked about this morning that um if you guys were here this morning, I'm sorry you have to rehear my theory. I think I can say it better this time, more coherently. Okay. So, I've been doing some pondering with respect to these two pairs of shoes, okay? And I was thinking back, first of all, I couldn't understand why Angela Wagner would purchase only two pairs of shoes if three people were supposed to be at the crime scenes. Okay. So, and I'm thinking back also to what the prosecutor said in her opening statement about the shoes, about what Angela said when she was confronted about buying these shoes from Walmart. And what she said was, I bought them for my boys and they didn't like them and I threw them away. Okay. By the way, I showed the shoes. These are the shoes. Let me show. Oops, I forgot. Scrolling the wrong way. These are the shoes in question. I looked these up because I was watching TikTok yesterday early evening, and there was a mom on there whose son, who was probably 12, 13 years old, had expensive shoes and expensive clothes, and he wasn't taking care of them. So his mom filmed him at Walmart buying these specific shoes and a pair of shorts, a shirt, socks, and underwear. And he was out the door all in total for $23. And I remember the prosecutor saying that the shoes were like $13.97. You know how Walmart likes to have 97 or 93, some odd number at the end of their pricing. These are those. Okay. So I was thinking about what she said, that she bought them for her boys. Now, I am a boy mom, but I'm also a girl mom. But I have my boys first, and then I had my two girls. And when I refer to my sons, I typically say, especially if I'm talking to their dad, I will say, you know what the boys did? That's how I refer to them, or my boys. That's the term I use. When I'm talking about my husband and my sons as a group, like to my friends or to my daughters, I will say the guys. So that led me to start thinking and putting the pieces together as to why there would only be two shoes purchased. So what we've learned is that Billy Wagner set up a meeting on the 21st with Chris Roden Sr. Okay. And they did this via a phone call. All right. So if any of Billy Wagner's footprints were found outside of Chris Roden Sr.'s home, they could be explained by saying, well, I went out there and I met with them, we talked, whatever, and I left it around whatever time, right? Then he has a plausible reason. But let's say they found this specific shoe print in the front of the house, right? And no, and the police are going to pull Chris Sr.'s phone records, his cell phone records. They would have seen that call. It was going to come out. So if Billy were to be standing in front of his home wearing different shoes, a pair of shoes that the state cannot find in his home or on his person, that's going to look very, very suspicious because he's already placed himself at the crime scene just by making that phone call. Even if it had been a text, regardless, there was a cell phone to cell phone communication between the victim and Billy Wagner, right? Which would have made it suspicious if they couldn't find a his footprints should be outside of the home, not inside, but outside of the home. And if they didn't have a footwear to compare, that's going to raise some eyebrows. So that is why I believe that the shoes were actually purchased for Jake and George, because Billy Wagner was never intended to go inside of any of the homes. He was only there to be I believe, to be the getaway driver and the lookout. Like if say somebody tried to run out, he would be stopping them, right? And he was armed, so he could have unalived them as well, right? But it was never intended for Billy Wagner to go into any of the homes. It was only ever, I believe, intended for Jake Wagner and George Wagner to be inside of the Roden homes. So that is why I think that that explains why Angela would only purchase 2 pairs of shoes. Okay? That's my theory anyway. And that to me makes sense. Okay? I don't know how you guys are feeling, if you're following me or what you're thinking, because obviously I'm 20 seconds ahead of you guys. So I'm going to give it a second for you guys to comment. But that's my theory. Okay? Don't fall asleep yet, Nonstop Mom, because this next part's for you, babe. All right. So when we were watching the testimony this morning, right? We were talking in chat, and a Nonstop Mom asked me what I thought about the moving of the trailers, right? So what happened is on May 12th, 2016, they removed all of the mobile homes. So it was, and the addition on Dana Roden's home, to a warehouse in Waverly, Ohio. And Nonstop Mom asked me what I thought about that. And I said that I think that it was a good idea because they'd already done an extensive evidence collection on all four on all four of the crime scenes, right? And they'd already started submitting items for testing through BCI. They were already testing some items. And what I thought was that it would be a good idea if let's say they got some preliminary results back, right? And they needed to go back into the homes, that would necessitate another search warrant, number one. And number two, you would run the risk of having released the crime scenes and say it's 6, 8 weeks, right? Between the time the evidence is collected and then the time that you find you get some type of result that causes you to want to go back and collect something else or look for something else inside of one or all of the homes, right? And you've released the crime scene. It's going to be problematic because it wasn't secured, so anybody could have come in and out of that home or that crime scene, in between, right? So then Nonstop Mom asked, like who made the decision to move the homes and all of that. So, like I said at the beginning, I went and started looking it up, and I found several articles about this, and they all corroborated one another. So I picked the one that's local to Ohio, and that I thought was the most gave the most explanation. And so um, I'm going to read that one, and it was published on May 17th of 2016. Eh, So, okay, so this is what it reads. After more than 3 weeks of gathering evidence in the April 22nd killings that left 7 family members and a fiance dead, authorities have released the Roden properties on Union Hill and Union Roads to surviving relatives. That took place late Monday, said Dan Tierney, spokesman for the Ohio Attorney General's office on Tuesday. Quote, "We are talking about the real property," he said. "The property remains private property," end quote. Authorities also lifted most driving restrictions to the roads around the Roden property Monday, leaving barriers up but no deputies stationed at entrances. Deputies did remain on several sites along Union Hill and Union Roads. For weeks, crime scene tape, roadblocks, and a rotating cast of sheriff's deputies have restricted access to the structures and roads near more than 30 acres of property owned by Christopher Roden Sr. It was not clear who now has legal rights to the properties. Roden's ex-wife and all 3 of his children were among those killed. That decision will likely end up in probate court. Investigators last week moved 3 trailers and a camper where the killings occurred from the Roden property to a Waverly warehouse serving as the investigation's command center. A large addition that was attached to Dana Manley Roden's trailer was hauled on Sunday evening on a flatbed, said her father, Leonard Manley, who also lives on Union Hill Road. Authorities also have been towing vehicles from the property since May 3rd. Quote, "The whole idea is to preserve them for evidence in the case, and also we want to make sure we are preserving them for the family members," Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine has said of transporting the mobile homes. "There are pictures in there. There are other things that are very important to the family members." End quote. DeWine said the moves were in the interest of security and, quote, "so the sheriff doesn't have to have people out there all the time," end quote. Tierney said the trailers, camper, and other items transported from the property remain secured at the command center. Authorities have told the families that the trailers will be moved back to the properties after the case is concluded at no cost to the families. Manley said he can't quite imagine that. Quote, "I wouldn't want to live in them. Who would want to live in a trailer where 3 people got murdered?" he said. "In my book, they could have burned them all to the ground." End quote. Christopher Roden bought the property at 4077 Union Hill Road on March 21st. Property records show that is where Dana Manley Roden, his ex-wife, with their 2 children, Hannah 19, lived with their 2 children, Hannah 19 and Chris 16. Leonard Manley said numerous chickens and a 3 to 500 pound hog remain on the property. Authorities have been watering and feeding the animals since the investigation launched April 22nd, when the 8 bodies were discovered. Family members started feeding the animals on Monday night. DeWine repeatedly told reporters that investigators are not approaching the case with a grand theory about what might have happened. Instead, he said they are looking at each piece of evidence without preconceived notions or ideas. I can't remember what I just scrolled too fast. Notions, yeah. So basically, Nonstop Mom, to answer your question, um, hi, Seth. Thank you for coming. All right, Amelia. Yes, this was another problem. So, but in the beginning, up until between April 22nd and May 12th of 2016, the homes were secured, meaning they had crime scene tape, the road was blocked, and there were officers out there all the time. That's why they took them. That's why they, and it was Attorney General DeWine that made the decision to go ahead and seize the trailers, so it could alleviate the stress on the sheriff's department having to post officers out there to stand guard over the properties, right, the homes, and it was it was about preserving evidence and saving money, quite honestly. And then, as Jennifer Bradford has said, this is 100% correct. So when these homes were moved to this warehouse, um, there was an investigative journalist who went out there and took video of the warehouse, showing that it was unlocked and that there was no security. So the contention was it was not a secure location. So that was the problem in the very, very beginning. So that's that as far as the who came up with removing the homes, where they went, and how much security was around the homes prior to them moving. So there you go. I don't think that was there anything else I said I was going to talk about with respect to this case tonight. Did the shoe thing make sense to y'all, what I was saying about the shoe? Oh, Tony, I forgot to tell you. I watched that video. Adorable, adorable, adorable that you sent. So cute. Um, I'm trying to remember now if there was something else that I wanted to say, but I don't think so. Oh, I wanted to answer this question. You know, that's an excellent question, Bowling with Cotton Balls. And to be honest with you, I'm not exactly sure if if that type of thing is made available to jurors on any case, including, this one. There's obviously, we know that there are some particularly and especially gruesome crime scenes, and how damaging that can be to a juror, but I'm going to have to look into that. You'd think that there would be, right? You'd think that they have victims advocates, which, I mean, that goes without saying. I'm curious about that. Now I'm going to have to look into that. That's an excellent question. And I must confess, I don't actually know the answer to that, but I'm curious about that now. Seth, this is a good case to research. It's quite fascinating and sad all at the same time. And I think that this trial is particularly compelling because it's going to be a mother testifying against her son and a younger brother testifying against his older brother. And with respect to the brother, Jake Wagner, right? He's already pled guilty. Okay. And he will get 8 life sentences on top of life without parole, on top of the various burglary. I think, yeah, the burglary and gun charges. And the thing is that they're not going to run his sentences don't run concurrently. They run consecutively. So they'll start with the charges, the convictions that have the least amount of time, right? And he'll serve that time. and then he'll start on the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one. So life without parole is redundant because he was sentenced to consecutive, not concurrent. So he's not serving all of it, not he's not serving all of his time on all of the charges at the same time. He has to serve the time for each charge, one after the other, after the other, after the other. He will never get out of jail unless there's some weird situation where he's actually innocent and we've all been duped and yada yada yada. Then that's something different, but the likelihood of that is slim to none. But as part of that plea deal, because he was going to be a death penalty case, should he have gone to trial and been convicted, they were asking for the death penalty. So as part of the plea deal that he made, he must testify to the satisfaction of the state against his brother, who's currently on trial, and his father, who is awaiting trial, and his trial date has not been scheduled. And if he does so, the state will remove the death penalty from his brother and his father. His mother, Angela, has pled guilty, and she has been sentenced to 30 years in prison. And um, she's going to be testifying. So this is a complex. So the state has asserted that the motive for this boils down to the daughter that Jake Wagner and Hannah Roden shared, and custody. So, but it's a little. I think there's a little bit more to it than just the custody agreement. Um, Jake wanted absolute total control. And really, I don't know how much of it was Jake's idea or Angela's idea or both of them. I don't know, because we haven't heard anything about that just yet. Um, but the theory is that at one point, when Hannah Mae Roden and Jake Wagner were a couple, Hannah confided in Jake that she had been molested by a family friend as a kid when she was younger. Which, to be fair, she started dating Jake Wagner when she was 13 and he was 18. Okay, so younger, yeah, or a kid. You know what I'm saying? She was a kid, but at any rate, I digress. Apparently, and that Hannah had told her family about it, nothing was done. Okay, so apparently Jake at some point repeated this story to his mother, and Angela Wagner created this whole scenario in her brain that it was likely that exactly, Anna. Now they have no parents. Well, now she has no parents. Her father is going to be in prison for the rest of his life, and her mother is no longer on this earth. So, anyway, she created this, you know, elaborate scenario in her head that essentially nobody was. So Sophia was not being looked after, and the rodents couldn't be trusted. That if you know if something did happen, they wouldn't do anything about it. The rodents wouldn't. And then they also didn't like the fact that the Hannah also had just 3 days before her murder, 5 days before her murder, had a newborn. She had just given birth, and this child was with um, another victim's brother. So the other victim was Hannah Hazel Gilly, and her brother Charlie and Hannah Roden had a daughter together. But Hannah wasn't with Charlie at the time of the murders. They had broken up a long time ago. She was seeing another guy, and all of this essentially infuriated Jake and Angela, mostly because Hannah refused to be controlled by by the family. Really, is what the state's assertion is. And so um, Angela hacked into another relative's Facebook account and was able to see a private message exchange between Hannah and um, another woman, and um, this other woman was, offering Hannah assistance financially if she needed an attorney to, if they tried to pursue anything with custody. And Hannah said, essentially, I would never sign anything. I'll never sign custody. It'll be over my dead body. And that is what then ramped everything up. And that is the moment when the plotting and planning and scheming began with this family to kill the rodents. And they were fully prepared to unalive anybody that was in those homes that day. So, yeah, it's a very complex, it's a very sad case. Very, very sad. Every case is sad, but there's something especially heinous about this one because there were 3 children. So there was Hannah May had her I've heard different ages for her newborns. The baby was between 3 and 5 days old, because I've heard 3 days and I've heard 5 days. But her newborn was in bed with her and not harmed. And then her brother, Frankie, and his fiance, Hannah Gilly, Frankie had we had 2 biological children. His oldest son, who was 3, was there, but not Hannah Gilly's biological son. It was her stepson. And then they also had a young baby, 6 months old, a son, who was also found in his parents' bed, covered in his parents' blood, and but not harmed. And then the child who this whole fight was over was at her father's house. So she was at Jake Wagner's house when all of this occurred, but none of the children were harmed, not physically anyway, although I'm sure at some point the details are going to come out, and I hope it doesn't. I hope they never find out some of these details. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about it because it just creeps me the hell out. But and he did. I watched his plea and then the subsequent sentencing, and his demeanor throughout that entire um hearing was downright despicable. And I'm not usually one of those people that I don't expect much from somebody who's pleading guilty to a crime like this. Like, I don't expect um like I usually don't expect remorse, quite honestly, because anybody that has the capacity to do what this guy did, and I mean, he's not even that old, to be honest with you. He's a kid himself, really, chronologically, age wise, he's really not that old. But to be able to do what he did, I would not expect remorse from this kid, and I didn't see any remorse. But the fact that he smiled was what was so despicable, you know, and scary. So anyway, that's really the long and the short of it. And I don't know if I'm gonna get to old Alex Jones tonight. I'm kind of tired, you guys. And there's I still want to talk. I still want to. I'm gonna go live tomorrow morning, which is Friday, and then tomorrow night, which you've all been waiting for. The band is back together. Dr. B, Jen Lu, back on the roasts. And we're going to roast the phone call between Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow. We have a special surprise guest, too. You'll have to show up. I don't know if I'm going to put it in the thumbnail. I think y'all should just be surprised. Yes. Yes, Corky. See, the thing that is one of the elements that's so particularly shocking is this family, right, wasn't it's bad enough to be unalived in your own home, right? Your home is your safe space, it's your sanctuary, it's where you're supposed to be able to go, right? But the way that this happened, the amount of planning that it took, the countermeasures that they implemented to avoid detection, um, like I was, but the other part of it is what was actually done. Chris Roden Sr. was shot a total of 9 times. 6 of the times that he was shot was to the face. Hannah Gilley was shot 5 times in the face. It's just so excessive for what's needed to actually stop somebody's life. You know what I mean? It's This is why I have a yeah, there was people have said that Jake was abusive to Hannah physically and verbally, emotionally, mentally, very controlling, very exactly. And see, this is why it's messed up, you guys, because when you have the babies that are in the bed, right? Um, and we're gonna hear probably tomorrow from the medical examiner about the injuries that Hannah, May, and Dana and Chris Jr. Suffered. Okay, um, but let's say I kind of don't. There's part of me that feels like the babies were not in the beds with their mothers at the time of the shootings. And I say this because of the way that both women were found. Um, it was they both had one of their breasts exposed and they were breastfeeding because they were breastfeeding their children. But it was um, the odds of both women being found almost the exact same way. I just don't. To me, I mean, is it possible? Absolutely, and it may even be exactly what happened. It just, to me, something about it seems like it was done intentionally, like an extra, as if shooting them in the face. Excuse me. Shooting them, period, wasn't bad enough, but shooting them in the face and then and the thing is that this family, the Wagners, were familiar with the Rodens. Okay, they'd known each other for years and years and years. It's not like they only knew each other because their 2 kids happened to have a child in common, right? That's these families went back a ways, right, as far as knowing each other. And so it's not like they weren't familiar with the habits. And I think that they likely knew that the people that were going to find them were also going to be family members, quite honestly. And I think that the babies and the mothers were placed in the way that they were as to shock the person finding them, to be quite honest with you. That's just how I feel about it. It's just my personal opinion. And especially because of the overkill. And the truth of the matter is, and I've not heard anybody testify to this, but they did use silencers, but they were homemade. Okay. But they were up close and personal shots. And I would think that even with a silencer, especially a homemade one, there's a propensity for all manner of things to go wrong. Just because you test fire and everything's working good on the test firing doesn't mean that it's going to work well the day of the unaliving, and all manner of things could have gone wrong. and those babies could have been hurt or worse. You know what I mean? So to me, it just feels like that was, I think it was done intentionally. Whether it was done, um, why it was done, I don't think it was done for any good reason. I don't think that Jake put them there so that in the event that it was a while before they got found, that at least the babies would eat. You know, I don't think that's why he did it. I don't. I just think I think he did it because something is very, very wrong with his thinking. He has very, very wrong thinking. And so yeah, and it's just sad, especially when you hear when the medical examiner talks about just the actual injuries and how close they are to one another, the injuries, and how many times and where they are, and just all of it. And for what? For what? They don't, they not only it do none of the Wagners have custody of Sophia, they don't even have custody of themselves. They're in jail or prison. Well, now that right now they're in jail because they're waiting, they're going to testify. But after all of this, though, you know, after this is over, this trial is over, they'll go to prison, and then they'll come back, they'll sit in a jail, and they'll wait to testify in Billy Wagner's trial. So it's just a lot. And it's just particularly heinous. And I don't buy George's defense that he wasn't there and that it's not his fault that he was born a Wagner. See, that's what I think, Sam. I think it was for shock. And it just flies. It's just so disgusting and foul, you know? Just, ugh, yeah, it's just gross. Like, I don't even have better words for it. And usually, you guys know me, I usually have a ton of descriptive words. But there's something about this case in particular to me that is just, I, it's like the Wagners. I mean, you have to acknowledge the level of planning that went into this, you know, and this is what is like crazy to me is that when more than one person is involved in any crime, um, usually one person breaks. You know, somebody caves, they get scared, they get spooked, and they end up telling somebody, right, who then tells somebody, and then eventually it makes its way back to law enforcement. Okay, but in this case, this isn't something that they just sat down and planned like over like at, you know, at a family dinner, right? Over dinner one night. Okay. This took a lot that these were many conversations and many different plans. And yet at no point did George or Jake or Angela or Billy ever think like, bro, this is fucked up. We shouldn't be doing this. I can't even believe you know, having this conversation. I can't believe that even if all George did, let's say at the very minimum, right? George listened to the plan, didn't interject, didn't give any feedback, didn't have a vote, yay or nay. Either way, he just listened. At no point did he ever think that this is fucked up. I got to do something to stop this. I got to tell somebody. You know, like that's what's so messed up about it. That the way that they reasoned out, like they had one plan and then they were like, no, no, no. And then they had another plan and they reasoned out that that wouldn't work. And this is the plan that they settled on. And then they set about working the plan. And then after it was all done, they dipped out to Alaska, allegedly to protect Sophia from, you know, having to hear about any of this. Yeah. And then Jake gives an interview, but it followed us here. Yes, crimes follow you, asshole. So, not very professional, Jen. But that's kind of how I feel about all of it. So yeah, I guess we'll see what we've got in store for us during tomorrow's testimony. And then again, like I said, Dr. B and I are going to do the roast of the phone call between Melanie Gibb and Lori Value with a special surprise guest. Yes, exactly, Corkies. None of that. This is what is amazing to me. George didn't even think about his own child, right? If something happens, if we go through this, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. That's the best case scenario, right? The worst case scenario for George, right? If you're thinking about doing this, look, everybody knew that Chris Sr. had guns. What made them think that he wouldn't fire back? That maybe that day the one gun wasn't in the safe. One gun was out. So best case scenario for George is he goes to prison for the rest of his life. Worst case scenario is he's dead. You know? And the children. Not this was all supposed to be done for the children, yet it doesn't seem to me that anybody thought about that, about the children, actually. Because if you guys, there's, I can't remember what the name of the show on ID is, or it might even be Oxygen, where they interview the families of the perpetrators of crime. Like the first season was the what's his name? The truck driver that was a serial killer. God, what is his name? He was a happy face killer. You know who I'm talking about? And I can't think of his name, but his daughter was interviewed. And then they bring the family of the victims in, if they're willing, you know, and they sit and they all talk. And the truth of the matter is, the surviving family of the perpetrator, right? They're victims as well. Like, she didn't know, Jefferson is his name. I can't think of his first name right now, but Jefferson is his last name. But anyway, she didn't, it's not her fault that her father was a serial killer, but it doesn't keep people from saying things, nasty things to her and about her. You know what I mean? So, like, it's, I don't know. This whole thing is just, this whole trial has just really gotten to me. And the fact that there were, you know, children in the home that were in the beds, and then the 3-year-old, you know, I hope that he doesn't remember what he saw that day. I really hope, that that wasn't implanted and, you know, written on his brain permanently, you know, that he can't remember it. I really hope that's the case. But anyway, I guess that's kind of all I had for tonight. But I thank everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna get off of here and just go to bed early, and so I can get up and wake up early and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to discuss this trial and whatever testimony happens tomorrow, and then do the roast tomorrow night. I'm really looking forward to that roast, you guys. I am. I need some levity. I need to lighten up a little bit. I can hear it in my voice how tense and serious, and you know, it's hard. This true crime stuff is hard. But anyway, thank you guys all for being here. If you haven't done so already, would you please, 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 please give the live a thumbs up for your girl? I would greatly appreciate it. And I want you guys to have a great rest of your Thursday evening or morning, whichever it is for you. And I will see you all here tomorrow at, oh, you were just here for Jones, coolest. I'm sorry. I just can't. I'll do Jones, but I just can't do it tonight. I'm tired, man. I just can't. But I will. I'll do a little I was thinking on Sunday night, what I could do is like do a recap because there's a ton of trials going on right now and stuff happening. So I was thinking like Sunday should be like the recap of all the true crime stuff that's been going on during the week, and like do it like that. And I can recap Jones on Sunday for you coolest reviews. So anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow morning for the continuation of the trial. And if I don't see you in the morning, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow night for the roast. All right. Y'all take care. Stay safe out on the real streets and on these YouTube streets because Lord knows it's dicey out there. All right. Y'all have a good night and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Okie dokie. Bye.